Welcome to this presentation about our experience studying the CLIL subject at the International University of Valencia. We are Cynthia and Irene, and we will provide a brief overview of what we have learned, as well as our personal reflection on the process. The CLIL content and language integrated learning course has been a challenge in our learning journey. We were completely unaware of the existence of this particular and well-structured methodology. We had always believed that studying a second language was something tedious and boring. However, through the progressive development of the content, we have learned that language study can be approached in a fun, stimulating, kind, and warm way for students. Throughout this process, we have addressed the theoretical concepts developed by various linguistic experts, educational psychologists, and university professors. These include the triad, the 4Cs framework, Bloom's revised taxonomy with its education scaffolding, and various particularities of CLIL teaching regarding the classroom environment, teacher attitude, types of assessment, and methods for presenting content to make it stimulating and dynamic. We also find it important to highlight the difference between BICS and CALP, as well as the concepts of content compatible and content obligatory language. First of all, let's explain that CLIL is any type of program where an additional language is used to teach non-linguistic content. It is a tool for teaching and learning of content and language. Instead of teaching language itself, form and structure, CLIL works with content through language and language through content. The definition of a CLIL triad. This is the conceptual framework which argues that learning in CLIL is not linear, but a constant interaction between three elements: the content goes in a specific subject, the language goals communication, and methodology, cognition, learning skills, the thinking. These elements must be balanced for the process to be effective. Authors Bucoli, Lilith Hood, and David Marsh in the 90s. The 4Cs framework. This is a framework for planning teaching units that ensure total integration. The 4Cs are content, progression in knowledge and skills related to subject, communication, using language to learn and to express oneself, language of learning for learning and through learning. Cognition, challenging the students' mental capacities, and culture. Um, this is the perspective. It encourages students to reflect on their own cultural context and perspectives while exploring the perspectives of others. The way we communicate depends on culture, the way we teach depends on culture, and the way we think depends on culture too. This is something that Ducoile worked with.
So now it's me, Irene, talking. In the next slide, we are talking, oh, sorry, about the Bloom's taxonomy and the scaffolding. So as we see before in the cognition part, talking about the skills the student has to improve. So we have this hierarchy of educational objectives that classifies thinking skills from lowest to highest complexity. And in the other hand, we have the scaffolding, which is a temporary support provided by the teacher to help the students to reach higher levels of taxonomy. A very simple example of scaffolding activity, and so how to implement the Bloom's taxonomy. It will be an activity, a very simple activity about the countries. For example, to work with the remembering and the understanding in the base of the pyramid, we can offer to the students something like a visual matching with flags and phonetic support. Something like look at the flags and the names of the countries, and then draw a line to match them. Going a bit higher, we can work with applying and analyzing categorization table and word bank. So where do these countries belong? Put them in the correct house, like Europe, as Asia, or Africa. And the next level, a bit more complicated, it is the evaluating and creating something like sentence starters and a language bridge word bank. Imagine you are a traveler, choose one country and write about it. And to finalize, to in the more complex part of the thinking and the cognition skills will be the creating activities. Design your own country, non-linguistic representation. If you could make a new country, what will it look like? Name, color of the flag, and it was the authors of this Bloom's taxonomy. The original one was by Benjamin Bloom, and the revised versions about it was made by David Krathwohl, the revision. So in the next slide, we will see Biggs and Kalb. The author it is Jim Cummins, and this talks about the two types of linguistic competence needed in the education. BIGS stands for Basic Interpersonal Communicative Skills, and it means like the very basic vocabulary and expressions, the everyday social communication skills. And a person can acquire this level in 1 or 2 years. It's quite simple. And in the other hand, we we have the CALP, which is the Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. It is a more complex and academic language necessary for school success. Of course, it can take a bit longer time to improve it, between 5 and 7 years, and it involves abstract language functions like analyzing, arguing, justifying, and evaluating. So, as a teachers, we should look for a balance between BIGS and CALP, slowly introducing CALP concepts and new skills. The next slide, we continue. It is about the content obligatory and content compatible language. The authors are Snowmead and Ruiz. And this is, again, classifies vocabulary and grammatical structures according to their relationship with the content. This is for a teacher. Once you know the content you want to teach, then the, the obligatory language is the essential vocabulary and the structure without which is impossible to understand or explain the subject matter. We will see an example later. And the content compatible language is the language that is not exclusive to the subject, but that the teacher chooses to teach because it reinforces general linguistic learning. For example, the use of adverbs of time. This vocabulary aids the student in the exposition of his or her ideas. It is not obligatory to use it, but it is highly recommended. It is not accessible, but necessary to connect the sentences. So, as I said, we can see here an example, very clear example. In this slide, we can see what was mentioned earlier. We see a simple example of if we wanted to go into more detail about our solar system, part of the obligatory language content will be the names of the planet and the different specific terminology, like the sun, orbit, Rocky, a name of the planets like Mercury, Venus, we can see on the right side. In the content compatible language, however, will be all the expressions, instructions, and vocabulary we use to express and explain the content. Like, can you repeat that? How do you spell Venus? Or the connectors like because, also, some superlative. This is the biggest one, this is the smallest one. It's not obligatory for the students, but again, necessary to learn it. So another very important part of the CLIL methodology, uh, it will be the very specific particularities of teaching in the classroom. We can see that the classroom environments uh, must feel safe and for the students, low anxiety environment. Here we can remember the Krashen's affective filter, the input hypothesis. We are not explaining it now, but it's also something we have learned, of course. So the classroom should be print rich, filled with visual resources, graphic organizers. It must be bright, well organized, and that enables group collaboration and encourages a joyful, engaging environment. So what about the teacher attitude? Here we can see some main words we wanted to give more, yeah, more protagonismo. Like the teacher should be positive, make classes relevant. It has a role mode, make the class engaging. And so we continue with the type of assessment. It should be mainly formative and summative. Both content and language are assessed. However, how can we make sure that the lack of language doesn't affect our assessment of content? So by using methods which use the least language, complete grids, draw diagrams, matching info, true or false answers. And yeah, almost finishing, we can also see that content presentations in CLIL should be stimulating and dynamic. Content should be presented multimodally, like visual, auditory, using even more some movement for the students. Techniques such as gamification, project-based learning, and tasks that connect with the students' reality are used to maintain high intrinsic motivation. Also, asking meaningful questions to the students allows them to think more and to express their ideas, which helps them to develop their language proficiency. Effective questioning is also a key way to embed formative assessment. And so this will be more or less a review of the content covered on the subject. We have not mentioned it certain details such as the importance of foreign language learning or the current situation regarding the implementation of this methodology in Spain, or maybe the theoretical aspects like Cummings quadrant or the output hypothesis suggested by Swen. However, we believe this presentation addresses a large part of the essential content needed to understand the CLIL methodology. Yeah, and the next slide, we start with the final reflections. In this case, me, Irene, I'm going to explain a little bit my experience. So I can say that my experience with the theory has been positive. It was presented in an accessible and manageable way with many, many extra resources available. So thank you so much, Maria, for the effort and the passion. However, completing the activities require a great deal of effort and frustration. As I'm not a digital native and do not have a strong interest in that world, having to access, understand, and put it into practice was a significant challenge. Without a doubt, it has been a path full of learning. Um, However, I do not entirely share the need to present everything in a audiovisual way, creating so many videos or using technological devices for games. Even with a pedagogical justification, I believe there have always been and still are alternative ways to present and approach content. Precisely because we live in a highly digitized era, I will always first look for ways to make classes more analog. We believe that students can only be engaged with audiovisual resources, but this is exactly what they are already exposed to almost exclusively. Television, mobile phones, video games. I do not see it as necessary to continue this dynamic within the classroom. There are no concentration problems, there are problems with excessive visual stimulation. For example, why create a story jumper when there are paper books and live voices? Nevertheless, getting to know all these tools has been fascinating. All this content will be very useful and inspiring in my professional career, allowing me to blend CLIL methodology with a human-centered and warm approach. And almost finishing, Cynthia will explain her experience.
Yeah, now I will talk about my personal experience, and I think with this subject has been demanding, but also very valuable. The activities proposed to the different units have been interesting and useful, as it helped me to better understand the theoretical concepts of CLIL and to apply them in a practical way to the design of teaching materials and activities. Um, the practical work requires a high level of dedication and organization, and some tasks were quite detailed and time consuming, which sometimes made it difficult to keep up with the deadlines. Even so, this effort helped me to reflect more the apply on the methodology and on my own learning process. One of the most positive aspects of the subject has been learned to use different digital tools for creating educational materials. I believe that developing digital competence is important for teachers today. However, thinking about real classroom situations, I am so aware that teachers often have limited time to design materials with such a high level of detail. For this reason, I think it is important to find a balance between innovative methodologies and realistic teaching conditions. In general, this subject has helped me to gain a clear understanding of clear methodology, both in theory and practice. Although the learning process has required a significant effort, it has been a meaningful experience that has contributed to my professional development and has given me useful ideas for my future teaching practice. So, in this slide, some of the many different resources we have checked, there are tons of them. And so we have finished. Thanks a lot for your attention. We really hope you have enjoyed. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Oh my God. Cynthia?